Hello, welcome back to AI Ramblings, episode 49. I'm Michael Parekh, your host. Lots to catch up on in AI land again, as usual, and an interesting main topic as well. So let me start with the, no particular order, some three big things I want to focus on in 49 today. First up, OpenAI. They're obviously getting ready for one of three major mega AI IPOs later this year. They are scrambling to cut off at the pass Anthropic, that is building a huge head of steam in the enterprise market, tens of billions of dollars of revenue at stake here. And in the meantime, they decided, after announcing an extended code red couple of weeks ago with their CEO of applications, Fiji Simon, they're always saying, hey, we're not going to be doing side quests. We're going to focus on the core task. So this week, guess what? They've picked up a side quest that they really liked. They bought a podcast company called TBPN. A lot of people call it TechBro Podcast Network. It's very popular, 70,000 subscribers, huge, right, versus their 900 million users of ChatGPT. 5 million in revenues last year. OpenAI is on the track for 20 plus billion in revenues. So, and they reportedly paid, quarter of $1 billion, low 100 million, millions is what's being talked about. Anyway, the point is they're basically looking ahead in terms of marketing opportunities and controlling some aspects of online media that could provide favorable veneer on the whole OpenAI mission and exercise, but it is a distraction. And so it's an important element to kind of focus on as a news item, especially after they said we're not going to do these side quests. And in addition, they also had some senior management level developments. Fiji Simon, who I talked about, who's the head of CEO of applications, is now just a week ago got assigned to focus on AGI deployment. She regrettably had some medical issues, so she's taking a step back from the company for a few weeks, few months. We don't know. Remember, they're looking to do an IPO by the end of the year. And they've also rejiggled some of the senior management folks, a couple of people stepping back, a couple of people stepping into new roles. I have a lot of details on all of this in the show notes, a lot of links, a lot of posts on AI Reset to Substack. Please look at that for a lot of backup material on all the items I'm talking about today. But so OpenAI continues, in my view, to be a bit distracted relative to Anthropic. Of the three major mega IPOs, I think Anthropic is the one that you can see running around the laps on a prep basis a lot more aggressively than the other two. And I'm going to come back to SpaceX in a moment as well. The second item I want to talk about is Microsoft. Remember Microsoft that got OpenAI on its big ramp with its iconic $13 billion investment and partnership. That stake in this current IPO track is worth, 130, $150 billion to Microsoft. So that's good news. The stock had a bit of a bump on that. But in the meantime, their major arrow in the AI realm, which is Copilot for Windows, Copilot for Office 365, etc., has not been doing that well. Office 365, which has 450 million subscribers around the world, less than 3% use Copilot. So they decided to say, let's double up here. We'll put both OpenAI, which we have access to in their technology, and Anthropic, which we also invested in, so we have access to their technology. We'll have those two models check on each other's work and sell the whole thing as something called Critique as part of a new higher tier package at $99 per user. We'll see how that works and goes. But a lot of people are finding that it's easier just to become a subscriber or a premium subscriber to to Anthropic's Claude Code and Claude Cowork products directly. I recently just upgraded my subscription from $20 a month for Claude Cowork to $200 the max. And guess what? It works with Excel and Word and PowerPoint and all these geeky things very well, integrates it all. And now my computer basically does all kinds of stuff with me not paying attention better than what I can do with Copilot from Microsoft directly, even if I paid them their tariff. So Microsoft has a lot of technical, organizational product things to do to really get up to snuff to compete with the two leading large language model companies. And in the meantime, they too are having a lot of organizational shifts. They had done one of the first acqui-hires about 2 years ago, a company called Reflection AI, $650 million. They took the founder of that company, Mustafa Suleiman, and Satya made him the AI chief. Well, this week, they took the Copilot responsibilities away from Mustafa and put him in charge of superintelligence, aka AGI, which is analogous to what OpenAI did, where they took Fidji Simon, who was the CEO of applications, and put her in charge of AGI deployment. So AGI superintelligence is kind of the promotion upstairs for a lot of the senior people at OpenAI, at Microsoft, even Meta, which obviously has a whole Meta superintelligence group. Their senior executives are very focused on that. In the meantime, you've got Anthropic that is literally just on the ground doing the blocking and tackling, just making this work with that and that work with this, and do all the stuff safely with guardrails relative to if I did it on OpenClaw. And so as we look at all this stuff, this is really important to watch. And then you don't forget SpaceX, which is going to be the first mega IPO. Current valuation talk is $2 trillion by June, by Elon's birthday. And he just gutted most of the founders at xAI, which is his AI company. And he is starting from basically scratch, creating an AI coding product. So he knows he needs to compete with Anthropic's Claude Code and Cowork. He needs to compete with OpenAI's Codex. He needs to compete with Microsoft's Copilot. And he has nothing right now, but he's going to have one of the highest valuations come June if he's successful in getting his IPO off the ground for SpaceX xAI. So that's the second topic, OpenAI, Microsoft. And the third topic I want to talk about, and I had a number of posts this week on two major crunches that are going on. One is for AI tokens, creating in these data centers the basic thing, which is the oil of the AI age. This is the stuff that actually, when you ask AI to do stuff, it's doing a lot of computations at exponential numbers. And the AI tokens are what qualifies and it builds the answers, both understanding your questions and giving you the answers. So the race to build AI token factories is on, not only in the US, not only amongst these big companies, but also against companies in China. Same thing with energy. This stuff is all linked to electricity. If you don't have electricity, your AI data centers, a gigawatt costing 50 billion, you get all the chips you want from NVIDIA. They sit in a warehouse until you turn the power on. So there's a big AI token crunch and AI power crunch. Users are coming on in droves to try AI. The problem they're running into is capacity limits. I'm sure if you're an early adopter user of some of these services, even at a $20 monthly subscription, you're running into those cap limits a lot more frequently than you'd like when you start to get your computer to do various things. And it says, we're done for the day. Maybe come back in 3 hours. And unless you want to pay me another $100, and you can do that. And a lot of people are doing that, which is why their revenues are ramping, these companies. So AI tokens and energy crunch is a big deal. There's a lot of detail here to understand. Again, I have 3 or 4 separate posts on this, which are going to be in the show notes. So please do look at that. All of this brings us to our major topic of the week. And that, to me, is coming back to the 3 IPOs. I've already talked a lot about that in the last 2 or 3 episodes of AI Rambling, but I just want to talk about a dynamic led by SpaceX, by Elon. He is aggressively working with the ratings agencies and the major index companies, the NASDAQ index and S&P, et cetera. Basically, these are passive index vehicles that basically are the drivers for literally hundreds of billions, if not trillions, of passive investment dollars by investors, regular investors like you and me, into these funds. And they are forcing these indices to accelerate the onboarding of these IPOs, these companies, in a matter of days, 15 days in the case of SpaceX, whereas normally you would have to have your company be seasoned in the public markets for at least a year before you're considered to be qualified in a passive index. And most of the index companies seem to be amenable to letting SpaceX in earlier, likely OpenAI, if they ask, and maybe Anthropic, which is both a good and a bad thing. It's a bad thing in my view, and I'm the AI analyst. Been tracking this stuff for 30 years, really for looking out for what's good for investors, what's good for the investors on the public side, on the private side, these dynamics. And I think this is a bad trend where the big IPOs, because there's so much money at stake in terms of fees and prestige, they're literally force feeding these IPOs in short shorter durations into the passive funds. And I think this is a big issue because it affects a lot of regular people who don't really pay attention to this stuff. These indices are what's called market cap weighted, which means if you have something that collectively these three companies are going to be $3 trillion, that could be 4 or 5% of a major index, which means your portfolio, whether you like companies that are overvalued, undervalued, profits, no profits, AI bubble, no bubble, you own it, and you're not going to get rid of it until you sell your index. So I am arguing for regular folks to start paying little attention. This is not investment advice, but just pay attention to potentially shifting some of your passive index dollars from market cap weighted indices to equal weight indices. So in other words, today the six major mega companies are 40% of an index. In an equal weighted, it comes down to 10% or less, which obviously means not a good thing if these companies race ahead of the market, you're less represented, but it adjusts the risk reward, especially at a period where companies like Elon is literally right now forcing all of his bankers, all of his lawyers to use xAI so it generates hundreds of millions of revenue short term that he can put in the prospectus for xAI as an argument for why regular folks should actively buy SpaceX in the IPO at a valuation up to 2 trillion. 2 trillion. There's a lot of good pieces of SpaceX, Starlink especially. I've written a lot about this. This stuff on as a professional analyst for 30 years, again, not investment advice, this thing is not worth 2 trillion. Some of the parts analysis that I would do would put a generous valuation at less than half a trillion. This is Tesla is the mother of meme stocks, as I've said. It trades at $1.6 trillion market cap. Most of its business just being the auto business, which is worth less than 250 billion. But it stays there because everyone around the world is bought in to the Elon Musk meme, which is fine. And this can continue for a very long time. But this stuff, when gets force fed into indices, is a not a good thing. Tesla is already 3-4% of most indices, where you've got one company that I think on fundamentals, there's a disparity. Again, one analyst's opinion, not stock advice. But I want to just point at this out. This force feeding of mega IPOs into passive indexes is like indices. It's like force feeding geese to make foie gras. Not a pleasant process. Not good for the geese. And we are the geese. If you're a passive investor, we are the geese. So I just wanted to highlight this as a major topic, main topic to discuss this session on episode 49, which gets me to a read of the week. And it's tied to my obsession of the week, which is Apple. Apple just crossed its 50th anniversary this week. And so if you're looking for something fun to read this weekend, if you haven't, it's really one of my top books for the year last year. It's Patrick McGee's Apple in China. It literally is a lesson on how Apple inadvertently created one of the biggest manufacturing supply chains under the leadership of Tim Cook. And it's a story worth understanding. There are some excerpts that have been done in publications like the Financial Times. Again, links in the show notes. So do take a look at whether you read the book or look at the summaries or the reviews that are in the. I think you'll come away a little bit more cognizant of the remarkable execution that Apple has executed over 50 years, ups and downs. And that brings me to my obsession of the week, which is Apple. As someone who in his early 20s spent 30% of my disposable income my first year or two at Goldman on Apple gear and their laser printers and so on, I've been an Apple consumer and fan and investor for a very long time. And on the whole, it's been big plus than negative. But there are a lot of good summaries, books on Apple at 50. And I've lined up about 4 or 5 of these links in the show notes that you might want to look at. One fun one is a cool ranking of Apple's top 50 products. They had a lot more over its 50 years. And how would you rank them? Spoiler alert, the number one is the Apple iPhone, introduced in 2007. I've got links to Steve Jobs' original video where he revealed the Apple iPhone and people gasped and so on. That in itself is worth a 10-minute watch. So that is my obsession for the week topic. And I wanted to just underline that. If you're an Apple user, this is stuff that you'll appreciate that. It's fun to kind of think about that Apple and Microsoft are the big rivals in their day. obviously Steve Jobs versus Bill Gates. Microsoft just passed its 50th anniversary a few weeks ago, and most of you probably don't even remember that because Microsoft, as big as it is, created the first richest man in the world in Bill Gates was Windows, MS-DOS. Not that exciting. Apple dented our lives with the iPhone most recently, but with AirPods, with the iPod, just so many products and software, that they've created over the years that has really impacted us. And in my view, they're just getting started with what's coming ahead in AI. If they execute to what I think they can, and they've already started, I've written a lot of things around that. They're already a toll gatekeeper for most of the major AI models in the next 2 years around Siri and more. So Apple is in a very good position, and I wanted to focus on that as my obsession of the week. And that basically winds us down on our episode 49 today. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, please hit me up online. And as usual, likes and subscriptions most appreciated. And I look forward to joining you on AI Ramblings, episode 50 next week. Stay tuned.